This is KTN Prime, and tonight we're focusing on corruption, the one cancer that is slowly eating into the fabric of the nation. And tonight we ask, are we as a country politicizing the fight against corruption? Is there hope? What contribution has the opposition had on the fight against corruption in the country? And so tonight we will be speaking to Kieni Member of Parliament Kanini Kega and Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar. We will focus on that story as well from Kisumu that saw President Uhuru Kenyatta and CORD leader Raila Odinga share a platform. Victor Ogale will tell us about what happened in Kisumu today. Also tonight on KTN Prime, we will tell you about an internal memo about Garissa University College and why it is generating so much attention. Masi Kandie will be joining us from Eldoret with more details on that. But first, let's look at our top stories tonight.
Kuna wengine ambao wanapinga NYS. Hakuna mtu anapinga NYS.
Sisi zote tuatumikia the same Kenyans.
Cooperation calls even as Raila questions Jubilee's transparency in NYS saga.
Suspend the cabinet secretary for devolution of a corruption allegation at NYS.
What is so special about this cabinet secretary for devolution and planning? That she can continue to sit pretty in the office?
ODM sustains pressure against Waiguru. All Garissa University staff ordered to return to Garissa immediately. And water shortage in Nairobi ahead of planned shutdown of the Ngethu treatment plant. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Lindo Gutu. William Sila is our sign language interpreter tonight. President Uhuru Kenyatta and CORD leader Raila Odinga shared a platform in Kisumu where they promised to work together to promote unity and national cohesion. The two were attending the Silver Jubilee celebration of the Archdiocese of Kisumu under Reverend Zacchaeus Okoth. KTN's Victor Ogale covered the proceedings at Uzima University College and now joins us live from our Kisumu office with more details. Victor, what stood out for you today?
Linda, what really stood out for me is the fact that the two leaders, Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta, shared a podium and they were in talking terms, and what people maybe thought would be there, the bad blood that was there after last week corruption case against the NYS and cabinet CS Waiguru did not really prove to confuse the two, and this is what I prepared earlier in the day.
It was the first time that President Uhuru Kenyatta and CORD leader Raila Odinga were meeting face to face since the revelation of the National Youth Service's 826 million shilling scandal that has generated intense debate from Jubilee and CORD camps. President Kenyatta's convoy from the Kisumu International Airport caused a stir, forcing him to make a stopover in order to greet the residents of Kisumu County on his way to Uzima University College grounds. In a rejoinder to queries from a section of Jubilee leaders, Raila Odinga promised to work with Uhuru Kenyatta on matters development.
Nobody should cheat you, Excellency, that somebody is opposing the project of NYS which they're doing in the country. People are talking about what you call transparency in procurement. And that is normal in any kind of transparent society where we are today. If somebody says, investigate this and that, he's not opposing anything. How can somebody be opposing a woman? We support women. I'm the strongest supporter of women.
Uhuru welcomed Raila's sentiments and emphasized that destructive politics should not be allowed to undermine developmental projects by the government.
Sisi pia kama viongozi wa kisiasa tuastahili pia tujue ya kwamba hata tukiwa vyama mbalimbali tuastahili kujua ya kwamba tuatumikia Wakenya wale. Hakuna tofauti, hakuna mtu ambaye akona Wakenya wake. Sisi zote tuatumikia the same Kenyans. Kwa hivyo hata tukiwa vyama tofauti, vile Archbishop ametuambia leo, vyama tofauti sio uadui.
NYS is changing our country And anybody trying to fight NYS is trying to fight a woman. And anybody trying to fight a woman does not want this country to go on.
In polygamy, when you only go to one mother's house, you will be seeing chaos. Because we are in Siaya, we want to see you. Homa Bay has said you go to Homa Bay. But we want you in Siaya more than even Homa Bay. So I would like to take this opportunity to invite you so that whatever you have that you always bring to Kisumu, why don't you also bring it to us in Siaya?
The two are attending the Silver Jubilee celebrations of the Archdiocese of Kisumu under Reverend Zakayo Sokoth at the Uzima University College grounds. President Uhuru Kenyatta has urged political leaders to remain united, as this is the only way to create a harmonious living within our borders. Victor Ogale, KTN, in the county of Kisumu.
Victor, thank you. Pressure is still mounting on Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru to step aside after a section of ODM leaders maintain that she is under investigation of corruption allegations at the National Youth Service. Ian Wafula has the details.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has publicly defended Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru over the NYS procurement saga.
People who work, generally, people who can show results, generally, get a little more targeted than people who don't show results. It's a general trend.
3 days later, and a section of ODM leaders will not let the matter rest. They maintain that the cabinet secretary should be suspended over corruption allegations at the National Youth Service.
And institute thorough forensic audit into NYS finances, procurement systems, curriculum and ethnic, regional and gender composition.
The presidency had brushed off these claims through spokesperson Manoe Sipisu, terming them as attempts to tarnish the image of his administration ahead of planned visits by Pope Francis and US President Barack Obama.
We shall continue to put them on the defensive perpetually, because if we don't do so, we shall be failing as a movement of the people. So the reduced minimum has been stated that Waiguru must step aside.
Recent revelations indicated attempts to pilfer over 800 million shillings from the Integrated Financial Management Information System. While investigations into these circumstances are ongoing, State House maintains that in no way do they involve Waiguru, and hence she has no reason to step aside.
There are a number of cabinet secretaries who are languishing in the cold, as it were, because of allegations of corruption in their dockets. The question is that Kenyans continue to ask, what is so special about this cabinet secretary for devolution and planning, that she can continue to sit pretty in the office in the face of serious revelation of graft?
The opposition has sustained the pressure against Waiguru ever since the revelations on the NYS saga. Ian Wafula, KTN.
So there's an internal memo about Garissa University College that has caused quite a stir. Let's bring in Mercy Kandia from Eldoret. Mercy, what is going on?
Yes, Linda, an internal memo has been issued from the principal, Professor Warfa, of Garissa University College, directing all its staff to report back. We got this information as some of the teaching and the non-teaching staff not being too comfortable about this new directive. Listen in to this story. Through an internal memo dated 25th July 2015, the administrative and support staff of the Garissa University College are notified to report by 1st July in Garissa and resume duties in their departments. Professor Ahmed Warfa, the principal, directs heads of departments of finance, procurement, internal audit, and other administrative units to ensure that all items relocated from the college are moved back to Garissa. The directive coming a month after the 593 students reported to the Moi University main campus in Eldoret and issued with new students' ID cards. Staff of Garissa University College who spoke on condition of anonymity stated that they are not assured of their safety should they honor the directive by the principal. They noted that they may be targets if they report back to the institution that was attacked by suspected Al-Shabaab militia. The memo, which states in part, considering that teaching of our students who were relocated to Moi University main campus has come to an end, and end of semester exam will start on 6th July 2015. Most administrative activities will no longer be necessary in Eldoret. It continues to state that those who are coordinating administration of examinations are exempt from the directive and would report back as soon as the exam period is over. Education Cabinet Secretary Professor Jacob Kaimenyi had directed the closure of the university, which the Senate ratified days after the terror attack on the university. When contacted on phone, Principal Professor Warfa said the directive must be honored since the staff belong to Garissa University College and not Moi University. He said that the staff must report to their workstations as the university does renovation and take stock before it's reopened. Warfa noted that he had in the past written more than 5 letters to the Security Committee on increasing security at the university. He explained that security patrols are being carried out 24 hours at the Garissa University, however maintaining that the security docket was being handled by the county commissioner and the security committee. 147 students and a security officer were killed after assailants attacked Garissa University College at dawn on April 2nd. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attack. Mercy Kandia, KTN, Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County. And the lecturers, there's administrative staff who should be traveling deadline by tomorrow back to Garissa County are saying that tomorrow that might not just be happening, that they are having a meeting at the main campus in Eldoret, Keses area in Uasin Gishu County to give, a consolidated opinion about going back to Garissa University. One of the staff just told us here at KTN that they are calling upon the University Council and management to consider absorbing them into the university. Back to you, Linda, in studio.
Mercy, what are their main concerns with regard to this internal memo?
What they're saying is that, first of all, some of them are saying that they have not fully recovered from the trauma. They are raising concern that even as the shootings were happening, they were being targeted. Some of the staff had been targeted. And what they're saying is that they are not comfortable with regard to the security that is currently at Garissa County. Linda.
Mercy, thank you. Of course, we'll wait and hear what they have to say tomorrow. Mercy Kandia from Eldoret. Let's bring you back to the city, and you need to listen to this story, especially if you live in Nairobi. Most parts of Nairobi and its environs will go without water on Wednesday and Thursday following a shutdown of the Ngethu water treatment plant. The Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company says the shutdown will pave way for maintenance works intended to improve water supply in the capital. And while the maintenance will take place for 2 days, residents have been advised to prepare for a longer time without water. Sharon Momanyi reports.
At the high-rise estate in Nairobi, Mama Benta Ouma is going about her household chores, albeit with too much trouble. Water here is a scarce commodity, and her use of it has to be carefully measured. If they are lucky, residents at the high-rise estate will get water once in 2 weeks.
Niseme hata wengine hata mwezi 8 hawajaona maji kwa tap. Mashawa hatujui sasa inafanya ama ifanyi. Choo ukitaka kuenda inabidi unachota maji na ndoo, unaweka kwa flasha, ndio flash. Sasa hata saa nyingine unaibika juu uko na mgeni ule unamheshimu. Akitoka kwa choo uwezi kumwambia shika hii ndoo. Ni wewe mwenyewe utamfuata na hiyo ndoo. Akitoka uende flash. Sasa hebu niambie, wiki 2, wiki 3 ujaona maji na macho. Choo iko kwa nyumba. Uko na vyombo. We mwenyewe unataka ufue manguo. Unataka uoge. Utafanya aje?
Nairobi Water walisema watatupatia maji mara 2 kwa wiki. Kuna wakati walikuja hapa wakatuita, wakatuambia watatupatia maji mara 2 kwa wiki. So hadi saa hizi hatuoni hiyo mara mbili kwa wiki. Tunaweza pata maji 20 minutes. Na hii 20 minutes hata ukiwa kwa nyumba huwezi jua kama maji ilikuja au la. 20 minutes a week.
And now Nairobi residents are being warned to brace for a period of water shortage as the Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company will be shutting down the Ngedu water treatment plant on the 1st and 2nd of July for maintenance work.
Over the time, the supply lines has been having a lot of sand or silt, and it has to be cleaned for it to have a free flow of water.
Most areas in and around Nairobi will be affected by the shutdown, and while the maintenance will take place for 2 days, water supply may not be affected for a week.
After the exercise is done successfully, the system takes time to stabilize, and that means that it might go to an average of about a week or so for the system to be fully operational.
Na sasa watafunga 1 week na wajaleta maji kwa hii wiki, tutatoa maji wapi? Tutatoa maji wapi? Na kile inanishinda hata hiyo swali ninajiuliza mimi mwenyewe. Si mvua ilinyesha? Hata nikaona kwa TV inaua watu. Hii maji ilienda wapi? Si wangeweka hii maji mahali itusaidie.
Water shortage is increasingly becoming a problem in various parts of the city. The Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company says that this is because there is an increasingly growing demand for water which beats the current supply. Residents are advised to store water and use it sparingly ahead of the shortage period. Sharma Manyi, KTN.
You're watching KTN Prime, and we thank you for staying with us. Tonight we're having a candid conversation about corruption. Where are we as a country in terms of fighting corruption? Have we gotten to a point where we now politicize the fight against corruption? And of course we have the opposition. What role are they playing in the fight against corruption? Are they helping? Are they making it worse? What are the solutions really if Kenya has to rid itself of corruption? We're having this discussion with Kieni Member of Parliament Kanini Kega is here with me, and of course at our I&M studio we have Hassan Omar. He's the Mombasa Senator. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on KTN Prime. Kanini, let me begin with you. How would you rate the Jubilee administration's fight against corruption?
We are doing very well, and from the onset, fighting corruption is not an event. Is actually a process. And I think when we came up with the new constitution, we set up independent offices to fight corruption. We have the office of the Director of Public Prosecution. We also have the EACC, which are actually independent bodies which are charged with fighting corruption. And I find it very strange when the opposition all the time they are telling the president that you are not fighting corruption. Yet we have independent offices which are actually doing that. But of course the president has gone a notch higher, and you remember that he brought together with EACC that list to Parliament, and that of course was a show that he is really ready to fight for corruption. And 5 members of his cabinet were actually, they stepped aside and they are under investigation. So I think we are doing very well. And as I said, fighting corruption is not the aspect of just that revolving door at EACC. It's not an event, it's a process.
Hassan, there are institutions, the Jubilee administration is doing very well in the fight against corruption. Do you agree with that?
I think Kanini lives in another world, absolutely. But I think holding brief for the government here ought to say that. But you see, today corruption ought to have been fought from the very moment that Uhuru's government came into power. Yesterday, Muhammad Buhari, the president of Nigeria, ordered the arrest of his brother-in-law. Before that, immediately he came in, he made it very clear that I am going to fight graft in this country, and he ordered the arrest of several members of the former and present members of the Central Bank of Nigeria. What Uhuru did do, he waited for a chorus of...
Hassan, just give me a minute. We're trying to work on something. I can't hear you quite clearly. Let's see if we can sort that out. Give me a few minutes. But Kanini Kega, when the president went into parliament and he gave that State of the Nation address, and he looked like the only person who is concerned about the fight against corruption, is he the only person who's fighting corruption in the country, would you say?
The government is made up of three arms of government. We have three arms of, of government. That is executive, we have the legislature, we have the judiciary. And when you're talking about fighting corruption, corruption is everywhere. Is in the judiciary, is in the executive, is in the legislature. And more so, it's also in the devolved government. I'm a member of PAC, one of the new members who actually replaced the other members who were actually dropped. And we had a very interesting discussion with Auditor General, who told us that a lot is happening in the county governments. And in fact, we were even shocked that he told us that there are some counties he is unable to access. His officers are unable to access because whenever they want to go and they want to do audit, and especially the far-flung counties, there are always reported cases of insecurity. Sometimes you see as if they are organized kind of crime so that the auditors don't visit those areas. So we ask yourself, is it the president only who is supposed to fight corruption? The president is doing his part. We ask the other arms of government to also do their part.
Question is, are they? Let's bring in Hassan Omar again. Hassan, I'm hoping I can hear you now. Kanini Kega says there are institutions in place and the Jubilee administration is doing very well in terms of fighting corruption. What are your thoughts on that?
As I said before we had the interruption, is that Kanini must be living in another world. I think they think fighting corruption is rhetoric. The president is rhetorical. We see Kanini giving himself a scorecard of doing very well. The word very well has lost meaning, if that was what we see is very well. As I was saying earlier, Muhammad Buhari sent a very terse message when he became president of Nigeria. Yesterday, Muhammad Buhari ordered the arrest of his own brother-in-law for alleged extortion. In his first few days in office, he had sent a clear signal about what his commitment was in terms of fighting corruption. What we have seen in Jubilee, after a litany of protests from across the spectrum of the formations of our society, the opposition, the civil society, and other stakeholders, is when Uhuru now comes with this rhetoric of fighting corruption by coming with a list in Parliament, where if we were to go by that list, that demonstrates to you 5-6 cabinet secretaries. That demonstrates to you how endemic and runaway corruption had been left to be. Just recently we saw the suspension again of members of the Kenya Airports Authority. What had happened is corruption had become a commonplace in the Jubilee administration. It is public pressure that pushed Uhuru to do what he did, but he is fighting it in a manner that today his own cabinet secretary is challenging whether the institution or ESCC, as it were, is rightly constituted. So I think what has happened in this whole charade is a public relation exercise which is devoid of the constitutional foundations. You try to then decimate the very institution that you expect to fight corruption by trying to remove the ESCC commissioner so that you can then now appoint your own commissioners through Kanini Kega, who will be sitting in the National Assembly soon to validate those appointments. So I think in a true scorecard, Jubilee has performed dismally. Uhuru is trying to do what I call patchwork, and I think that patchwork is so badly done because this temptation of always being a PR president is literally ruining, even possibly suffocating the fight against corruption.
Hassan, are you trying to imply that there is no political will to fight corruption in the country? I mean, to be fair, the president has been out there not once, not twice, not thrice, talking about corruption. Remember with KA when he mentioned the buses, when he was talking about individuals in his office, and of course what you just mentioned when he went into parliament and gave that list that touched on some of his cabinet secretaries, some of his PSs. You don't see that as political goodwill to fight corruption?
It's tough rhetoric. It's tough rhetoric. What happens is he needed to fight it from day one. You didn't have to suspend 5-6 cabinet secretaries if you were committed from the very onset. We have seen literally everything within the Jubilee government has been challenged. From the standard gauge railway, there's a challenge before it. Any mega project, there are structural challenges in terms of whether the award was done legitimately, whether there were no corrupt practices in the award of those tenders. So I think until at that point when the chorus in the public had become quite consistent. Then the president now goes with some kind of an amorphous confidential list that he was provided for by the ESSA director or chief executive, and then now starts this charade. Even his own, as I said, his own cabinet secretary is challenging the process, and I think what justice must be seen to be done. I've heard my own colleagues who are Jubilee senators, Murkomen, Kipchumba, Sang, talking about the issues of natural justice, that you do not come and release lists of people under investigations. You needed to at least get to a certain threshold before you come and make such kind of wild statements just for the cheers or the public gallery for a day or two, and then get into very structural challenges.
Okay.
Say you received a confidential list from the CEO, then later on disband the very commission that was supposed to prosecute these matters or take these matters to its logical conclusion.
All right, Kandini Kega, you've listened into Hassan Omar and his thoughts about whether or not this government is fighting corruption. Says there is no political will. What is the one thing that you can say the Jubilee administration has done to show its will to fight corruption in the country? Because he says these are games.
I think my good friend Senator Hassan is still in the old mindset, whereby there's in the old constitution, whereby the president was everything. The president was in charge of everything. He used to direct even the director of public prosecution. But now we have independent offices, and I think what the president has done is commendable. That I don't think there is anything more that the president needs to do for him to show that he has given that political goodwill. I think we should be asking the other heads of the other arms what they are doing. We should ask the Chief Justice what he is doing.
In your opinion, how are they doing?
I don't think they are doing good enough. I don't think they are doing enough to supplement what actually the president has done, because there is so much. The president can only do so much. So the moment now the president goes beyond that, of course they will now be saying that the president is interfering with the prosecution and all that. So I think the president has done enough. It is up now to the other institutions to do their part.
So basically the president is doing enough. His foot soldiers are not helping him.
Not foot soldiers, the other heads of the different arms of government. And I think also, like for example, the head of or the chairman of the Council of Governors, I think they should also be asking serious questions about the other governors, because there are serious issues about counties, and I think literally every county in this country has corruption issues. For example, the Nyeri case, I'm just taking that example because that is where I come from. There are two individuals, two ministers who have been adversely mentioned, and I think the case has been taken over by the DPP. And of course, when you ask the governor says that we have to wait for the conclusions to be made. And of course, they have been mentioned adversely. The moment you are mentioned adversely, I mean, the noble thing for you to do is to step aside.
So basically, there's no concerted effort to fight corruption.
Absolutely. It is now that it's only the president who is seen to be fighting corruption. The other heads of the different institutions are not helping the president.
Okay.
But I also say, I mean, it's also good to say, corruption is not like the normal theft, whereby there is a complainant. Corruption is a case of a willing giver and a willing taker.
There are complainants, the public.
Yeah, the public. And sometimes it also becomes very hard to prosecute those cases. But I think the DPP, of course, who is a very, very competent person, should at least do more. We need to see people going to jail. Unfortunately, he has been in office for the last, I think, 3 years, and we have not seen the big fish going to jail.
That is one of the main concerns. Let's see if we can listen into a bite from a politician who was talking about whether he was focusing on the story, the NYS saga, and he was giving his sentiments on whether or not Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru needs to go home, and the involvement of CORD in this whole debate.
Also hereby direct that all officials of the national and county governments that are adversely mentioned in this report, whether you are a cabinet secretary, principal secretary, or chief executive of a state institution, to immediately step aside.
Kwa sahi ninaomba president na deputy president ya kwamba Waiguru aendelee na kazi yake, kwa sababu vijana wanataka kuhudumiwa. Hatuwezi kukubali kila siku kusema step aside, step aside. Hiyo ni namna ya kukoroga sisi tukose mwelekeo. Ati ndio tuchanganyikiwe ndio watushinde 2017.
All right, Hassan Omar, let me bring you back into this conversation. Do you think, what are your thoughts about what's currently going on at NYS and the back and forth, whether or not the cabinet secretary needs to step aside?
First, Linda, let me just respond to something Kanini said.
Go.
Kanini, the simplistic Jubilee narrative, that whenever the things are not going well, Uhuru tends to pass responsibility elsewhere. When you see that, we talk about Langata Primary School land, it says, oh, it's Mimi, it is actually Swazuri. So I think what has happened is, but you see people develop or manifest themselves in the character they assume the leadership momentum is headed towards. So if you come in and allow runaway corruption, major infrastructure, major public contracts are taken up by friends and cronies, and there is a major contestation from every award that is in government, then people do have those kind of issues. Here when it comes to the Code Coalition, our only basis is the fact that we need to be fair to people. If you have started a process that is a charade, that you demonstrate that you're fighting corruption. And if you're saying you're fighting corruption, it's not out of the goodwill of Anne Waiguru that she came and said she had thought that this matter be investigated. This matter was brought to public light by the Star newspaper. When the Star brought it to public light, then now the Code Coalition felt, what is so special about Anne Waiguru? If every other person has been requested to step aside on account of some allegations, some rumors somewhere, which I've heard even members of the Jubilee Coalition, like Murkomen, who are quite good lawyers, contesting the kinds of thresholds that need to be attained before
Hassan,
somebody steps aside.
Hassan, hold on. Let me just interject.
You need to be fair to everybody.
Hassan, to be fair, Manoa Esipisu, that is the president's spokesperson, is on record, and he made it very clear that the cabinet secretary devolution is not under investigation.
Is not under investigation.
Yes.
Then she should be under investigation. That, I think, is what we're saying. If money, you see, Linda, from the point at which the news broke out on the Star newspapers, I've seen what the standard newspapers have carried. They have carried literally a litany of correspondences, insubordination, in-house, fights in terms of transfers, in terms of rations, in terms of alleged corruption in the whole institution. And therefore, that one little spark has manifested itself in so many other forms that we realize that there is a deeper issue. And you hear the Jubilee narrative saying that we think it's because it has anything to do with Raila and NYS and, for instance, Kibera or Kisumu. I think if any process is helping the Kenyan people, we are more than delighted to support it. But if this is done under an opaqueness that is losing Kenya money, then it must be investigated. And I think in terms of fairness, we have seen that with that little revelation by one of the media houses, a lot more revelations have come up to realize that not everything is well in that devolution ministry. But everybody is wondering why there's this special kind of place for Waiguru in Uhuru's administration.
Hassan, would you then say that the war on corruption has been politicized?
The politicization was inevitable on the basis that when you pursue the issue of corruption from a point of view of public relations, that you try to do it for the gallery. You defy every decency known under the Constitution, the rule of law, constitutional commissions that you try to decimate. You try to offer jobs to the people who are members of it, and now then bring in flimsy grounds for their disbandment on account that Kanini and his friends will vote for such a kind of a resolution. Then you've compromised the very institution, because what will happen now, Jubilee will have the capacity to appoint who they want into those commissions, and they will be able to control and literally manipulate the war on corruption. And if you hear even the in-house war, I heard the Jubilee from within themselves are now was saying that Kamau is being fought by cartels, and they are going to expose these cartels. I had minor commander in corps to talk about these issues. So even within the Jubilee itself, there is that polarization of that matter, that it does not appear to be a credible matter in terms of the fight against corruption.
Hold on, Hassan. I need Kanini to respond to what you've just said.
Absolutely, that it's actually politics, and I think it started after we won the 2013 general election. And of course, they went to court, and of course, the court upheld our victory. And from that day, they have had this narrative that this government is illegitimate and trying to portray this government as corrupt. It's a question of like giving a dog a bad name and hanging it. Yeah. And I know for sure they are not going to succeed. They have actually targeted most of the ministers who are hardworking. Look at the ministers who are now being arraigned in court. They are the most hard-working ministers. Look at Kamau. Kamau, who is now being charged with redesigning a road in 2007. And if you remember very clearly that for you to be appointed a minister, you had to be cleared by EACC.
Yes.
How did they clear Kamau on EACC, yet to them, he had a case. So it also raises a lot of questions, and especially on EACC. Look at the case of Waiguru. Waiguru is the one who raised the issue about the IFMIS. And we had a meeting with the IFMIS team, and they said no money has been lost, and IFMIS is tamper-proof. So whenever they are going around propagating this narrative, I think they are going to note. They are actually coming to note. And any opposition in the world should be a government in waiting.
Do you think they're playing their role as an opposition?
For me, if you ask me, the current opposition that we have, they will forever remain in the opposition.
Right. I remember we're having a conversation about corruption in studio. I have Kanini Kega with me, Kieni Member of Parliament, and at our I&M studio, we have Hassan Omar. He is the Mombasa Senator. And a good number of Kenyans remember an incident that happened in 2008 in Parliament when Boni Khalwale went on the floor of the House and made quite a sentiment on the war on corruption, and in particular he was focusing on Amos Kimunya. Then let's listen in.
To stop corruption at the Treasury, Kimunya must go. To end impunity in this country, Kimunya must go. To repossess the Hotel Grand Regency, Kimunya must go. To redress Kenyans who were conned into buying into the IPO of Safaricom, Kimunya must go.
When you look at the manner in which the minister has conducted himself, he has violated every single principle that is contemplated by the Public Officer Ethics Act.
Two leaders who stood on the floor of Parliament and made quite an argument on the fight against corruption. That was in 2008. Hassan, let me bring you in at this moment, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, because there's been this back and forth on whether or not the Jubilee administration is corrupt. But you are part of the opposition. What role have you played to ensure that corruption is curbed in the country? Because as we speak, an opposition is expected to play its role of providing checks and balances for the benefit of Kenyans. Has CORD done that with regard to corruption?
Linda, just before we went for the break, you saw Kanini looking visibly irritated that we have continued to put them on check. He's saying that we will never win government. The only reason we will not win government if we ever don't is either you steal an election or because you have these ethnic numbers that you're able to manipulate. There is nothing extraordinary about the manifestation of Jubilee's policy, the eloquence of its leadership, the intellect, or the soundness of their policies. They try to fly to Dubai and return before. So and I think we've had so many flights that have been a false flight. And I think we are not scared by the fact that you continue to get so irritated and telling us we will not win government. Kenyans out there are best judges of what the opposition is doing. And therefore the opposition will continue to check you. Linda, we have continued to check the Jubilee government. We have exposed scandals. We have strengthened institutions by giving them the confidence that they need to fight, to stick faithful to their mandate. We have continued to articulate in our public forums. They think we're doing it for Obama. They're very simplistic and cheap. We're doing it because this country matters to us. We did it well before we knew that Obama was going to set foot into Kenya. So I think the opposition's greatest weapon is its voice. That's why people like us will continue to come into these studios to speak out. We will continue to be in public rallies until that day where we get government. We will show you what government means, what commitment to fighting corruption will be. It will be done through the rule of law. It will be done through constitutional practice. We will give order to the fight against corruption. There will be no sacred cows. There will be no Waigurus and Gilus where there will be no distinction. Justice will be done, not only, and sin to be done. And therefore, there will be no charade of some members of parliament coming out from a certain region saying, you see, our people from Nyeri are being targeted. Kanini Kega now is contradicting himself, saying the best minister ministers have suffered the brunt of this whole process. Means therefore he's also accepting the fact that that list is not genuine, that there is politicization and public relations by the very president they're trying to defend. And I think unless you do things in a systematic way, stop this too much of public relation and get down to work in a manner that wins the confidence of the Kenyan people. But you cannot decimate us. We are an opposition that has brains. I think we have the litany of people who mean anything in this country. And when they speak, their voices have credibility. And every Kenyan does know, deep down their hearts, that there's very little being done to fight corruption. It's a charade in its best form.
Okay. Kanini, this is a problem that faces every single Kenyan, irrespective of the political divide which they come from. If you were to work with opposition to fight corruption, what would you want them to do to help?
If you look at that clip, which is well dramatized, it said that fighting corruption is not an event, it's a process. If you see that, it was accurately dramatized. And
what was dramatized?
The way Dr. Harwale put that case of Kemunya must go, Kemunya must go, Kemunya must go. Unfortunately, he didn't go. Because basically it was actually dramatized.
But by then they were playing their role. So what I'm asking you...
Absolutely. But the opposition, the current opposition that we have, you know, as an opposition, you are supposed to oppose and critique and offer solutions. The current opposition that you have, or we have, they only criticize the government and they do not offer any solution. They don't offer any solution. They just poke holes and they don't offer any way forward. And I think for any responsible opposition, as I said, opposition is a government in waiting. They should always have an alternative. In fact, I thought by now they would even have like shadow cabinet ministers. They should even have they should even bring the shadow budget for them, what they think that they can do if they're in government. So for me, the current opposition is not doing enough. They're just criticizing and all the time crying foul, saying that they are tyranny of numbers, all the time saying that we have the numbers and we are doing them. And sometimes you ask yourself, some bills in parliament are passed by, for example, 100 members of parliament, and the opposition, they have, at the moment, they have over 125 members of parliament. So they are not playing their role. Okay. If they want to pass any bill seriously, if they want to oppose or pass bills in parliament, they can do it. They have the numbers.
Hassan, we are running out of time, but I'll ask you this one final thing. What do we need to do as a country to end corruption? Because this is eating into our society.
First and foremost, Linda, when Kanini speaks, you can tell that he does not know the architecture of the new constitution. He thinks he's actually Jubilee and executive. This is a presidential system. You're supposed to be a parliament, and that parliament yes, it's guided by minority and majority, but it is supposed to not to be a tyranny of stupidity, of ignorance. It's supposed to be a tyranny that actually keeps government on check, the executive. So therefore, the fact that you tend to decimate things as if you're living in the old constitution, it tends to mean that you're an extension of Jubilee or the executive in the House. You're supposed to be an independent organ that oversights government, and that's why the opposition has its capital to speak against these vices, because the opposition is severely disnumbered when it comes to the fight against corruption. And Kadidi doesn't listen very keenly when the opposition is speaking. He does not see the alternative. Our alternative is always very clear. We say that Uhuru must not fight it as a public relation exercise. There is a constitution that must guide the actions of any executive. There's a rule of law framework. There are institutions that must not be compromised in terms of their independence and their capacity to work around these issues. You must not cherry pick that you like the executive CEO and therefore give all faith to the CEO and come and say you are briefed privately by the CEO. The CEO is supposed to give you a report as stipulated in the Constitution
Hassan,
to you,
can you
to
hear
the
me?
President,
Hassan?
and to Parliament, not to give you a confidential
Senator,
brief,
can you hear me?
which is based on rumors. And now Kanini himself is saying that one of his favorite cabinet secretaries is in that list come out. So I think what happens is there needs to be a structure. There is a constitutional practice. That's why CORD and all the constituent parties argue that it must be done within the realm of the rule of law. And it must have the commitment and the kind of selflessness to fight corruption, no matter who undertakes those vices that impact on this country adversely. So, Linda, the solution is always there. We always offer alternatives to what we say. But unfortunately, when you don't listen You just think it's noise and chorus. You think that the opposition must not criticize you. There was a time they said the opposition was saying nothing. And the opposition was
Hassan,
just
in the interest of time, I am sorry, I have to let you go. In the interest of time, Hassan.
They knew this adversary is very easy to vanquish. The only thing that makes this adversary able to be in television discussions is the fact that he has ethnic numbers, and they will be able to manipulate the ethnic numbers.
Senator, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off because of time. I really am going to have to cut you off. Senator, I'm really going to have to cut you off because you're running out of time, but thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime and for sharing your views on the fight against corruption. I'll leave it at that with you, Kanini. I'll let you have the last word. Quickly, in like 30 seconds, what do we need to do to fight corruption in the country?
I think we need to have a paradigm shift. We need to have a culture change because even if we say that the government is fighting corruption and our people are also condoning corruption, the people themselves, I think we need to change our culture. We also need to change this aspect that the end justifies the means. If, for example, a poor man vies, for example, for a parliamentary seat or a civic seat, and he is very humble, and of course he is corrupt-free, and a rich person who is corrupt vies, your guess is as good as mine.
We need to change our value system.
Absolutely, we need to change our value system. And very, very importantly, I said that fighting corruption is not an event. It's not a question of arraigning people in in the courts with handcuffs and dramatizing the whole thing. It is a process.
I have to end this.
And it is a concerted effort. It's everyone. It is not only the president who is supposed to be fighting corruption.
All right, so that is where we leave it. Thank you for joining us on KTN Prime as well. We have been speaking to Mombasa Senator Hassan Omar and Kieni Member of Parliament Kanini Kega on the fight on corruption in the country. Where are we? What is our scorecard? We thank you for watching this discussion, but stay with KTN. We have more coming your way in just a bit.
Good evening and welcome to KTN Business. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. The banking sector has remained a front runner for investors owing to the impressive returns the sector has posted over the years. But with rising competition in the sector, clear variances have emerged between the efficient banks and those that are yet to fully maximize their potential. And as Adelaide Chengole tells us now, it would seem that traditional heavy hitters have had to play second fiddle to the more leaner and nimble banks.
I think the banking sector has done very well in the past and is expected to do well. Their average return has been well over 20%.
This has made the banking sector a darling for investors seeking high yields, a fact that has made the banking counters the ones to beat at the Nairobi Securities Exchange.
More than 40% of the stock market is the banking sector.
Efficiency and effectiveness have become increasingly important, and it would seem that some listed lenders have done a better job than others, according to the latest banking sector report from investment firm Citon Investments. The report highlights the performance of banks based on 11 metrics, among them the loans to deposit ratio, the cost to income ratio, deposits per branch, and non-performing loans to loans ratio, among others. Once tallied, CFC Stanbic and I&M Bank beat out heavyweights like KCB and Equity Bank, which could not shake off the impact of higher costs, lower deposits per branch, and higher non-performing loans, despite having high net interest margin and high price earnings to growth ratios.
CFC Stanbic ranked pretty well. They are able to mobilize deposits. They have fewer branches, so the deposit per branch is actually really high. And if you look at their net non-interest income compared to the total revenue, is actually the highest in the banking sector.
Interestingly, while the majority of the big banks congregated in the middle of the list, Barclays Bank was ranked 9th after banks like NIC, DTB, and Cooperative Bank.
The deposit per branch have remained a bit low, and their reserve to NPLs have been lower. However, they have the highest net interest margin, so they are really able to mobilize cheap deposits.
National Bank ranked poorest of the 10 listed lenders, weighed down by lower profitability, efficiency, growth, asset quality, liquidity, revenue diversification, and capitalization. The bank earned 100 points, much lower than CFC's 58 points, and was 25 points below 9th-ranked Barclays Bank.
I can say it had the highest net cost-to-income ratio, and I think, to be fair to them, they are doing the restructuring, they're recapitalizing the bank and all that. So we actually think they're going to do well in the long term. They might not have done well right now, but I think there's still a lot of potential for them.
But with the new regulation targeting the banking sector and the rising competition from both within and without the sector, what does the future portend for banks? According to Seaton, the future remains bright.
Growth is still there. I think the banking institutions are really able to pass on the cost of the increased interest rates to the consumers, so they're able to maintain their net interest margins. So that said, we still think that there's potential for the banking sector.
Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
Thanks, Adelaide, for that report. Now, power producer KTN has struck 375 megawatts of geothermal energy from its steam wells in the Olkaria fields. The discovery is a major boost for the country's drive to boost energy supply to 5,000 megawatts by 2017. According to KTN, the wells will be used to develop 3 power plants with a total capacity of 350 megawatts. Since 2014, KTN has commissioned over 280 megawatts of energy, mainly from its geothermal projects, and this has lifted the country's total installed capacity to 2,200 megawatts. KTN has already hired consultants for the project and is in the process of selecting contractors, with negotiations for funding progressing well with development partners. And car importers continue to voice their disapproval of the proposed excise duty bill 2015. The Car Importers Association says the introduction of new taxes will make imported cars unaffordable and could cripple the second-hand car market. Under the proposed tax changes, excise duty will be charged depending on the age of the vehicle, with a car less than 3 years attracting an excise duty of 150,000 shillings. Cars above 3 years will similarly attract 200,000 shillings levy on top of shipping, car and handling costs. Kenya currently imports an average of 9,000 units per month, but this could go down to a further 4,500 should the bill pass.
Due to the fact that so many are going to suffer in terms of losses and in terms of their needs. For example, currently we have been importing 9,000 units per month, which, if the tax that is going to be slapped on us, if implemented, then it means we are going to import half. And if we import half...
And, well, that tax measure was introduced by Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Henry Rotich, in this year's budget as a measure to lower carbon emissions. Let's now take a look at how the Kenya shilling did fare today, and also a look at the listed company's performance at the NSE. And that's it for KTN Business. Do join me again tomorrow for yet another edition of KTN Business. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. For more business news, log on to our website, standardmedia.co.ke. For now, have a good evening, and Lynn Washira is up next with all the sporting action.
Well, it's time for KTN Sports. My name is Lane Washira. James Ngugi and Eunice Wamboi will represent Kenya at the 2016 edition of the World Lawn Bowling Championships, World Champion of Champions, to be held in either Scotland or New Zealand. The two were selected after winning their respective final matchups at the annual National Lawn Bowling Championships held at the Nairobi Club over the weekend. 26 top lawn bowlers in the country took part in the annual national singles tournament that was held at the Nairobi Club. The 3-day tournament saw 10 ladies and 16 men get into action, targeting the 2 slots available to take part in the prestigious Champion of Champions tournament set to go down next year. Players from Limuru Country Club dominated the tournament, with all the finalists coming from the club. In the men's category, James Ngugi overpowered his opponent John Gishano by 21 points to 14 to snatch a ticket to the World Champion of Champions tournament. In the ladies category, Eunice Wamboi humiliated Miriam Ndungu 21-3 to take up the other available slot to the World Tourney set for either Scotland or New Zealand. Despite being a Commonwealth Games sport, lawn bowling is still struggling to reach the masses, with many perceiving it as an exclusive sport in the country, a perception the Kenya Bowling Association is working hard to change.
We want this game to be known by Kenyans because it's a very fulfilling game, very fulfilling sport. It is not expensive to play, and therefore, and also now it is open to all Kenyans.
Not many people know about it. It's a minority sport, yeah? Although it's a Commonwealth sport, it's a minority, considering we've only got about 7 bowling greens in the country. 7. And I'm sure, people perceive this to be an old man's game. It's not. I mean, the Commonwealth and the world champions are 28-year-olds, 30-year-olds.
Currently, the struggle is to improve the standard of the sport, as well as attracting young people to take up the sport, considering that Kenya has only one trained coach.
2 years from now, I want to have trained much more younger bowlers in the region of 30. Because my aim is by the next Commonwealth, which will be 2018, I think, we should have a team we should be able to bring medals to Kenya.
The World Champion of Champions Championships will be held next year. And moving on to some rugby news now, the draw for the top tier category of the 4th edition of the Masaku International Sevens has been released. Top Fry Nakuru headline Pool A, which also has English side Brighton Select, Pirates and Kabras Sugar, while Homeboys are in a very competitive Pool B with Kenya Harlequins, Mwamba and Western Bulls. Uganda Under-19s feature in Pool C with Young Turks RFC, Total Nondis and French Froggies, while Pool D has Samurai, Wakulima, Mean Machine, Kilunda and Impala Saracens. The Masaku International Sevens kicks off on Wednesday, 30th June, with action in the age grade and lower tier categories. The top tier category of the tournament will be played on 4th to 5th of July. And veteran golfer George Kibira shot 1 under par in the outward 9s and a further 4 under par in the inward 9s for a total of 41 Stableford points to claim the overall prize during the 5th edition of the Standard County Classic Golf Series played at the Par 72 Nyeri Golf Club over the weekend. Playing off handicap seats, the Nyeri-based council sank 3 birdies, several pars and bogeys spread out on both 9s to return an authoritative score to claim the podium spot at the circuit, now in its 4th year and sponsored by the Standard Group. Nanyuki Golf Club Stella Mwangi, playing off handicap 5, was the gross winner with 82 points, as Masimburu was the lady winner with 37, and the immediate former Nyeri Club lady captain Pauline Kiguta settling for the ladies' first runner-up after carding a score of 36 Stableford points.
The media is what you'd call, in some terms, a village baraza, where ideas are able to come together and people are able to shape their lives. Nyeri is always home. In fact, Kieni is even warmer. We are coming up with a golf club very soon. So next time najua tutafanya hapa na tufanye huko.
Maina Muthuma, a dairy farmer in Karatina, is among those who have entered to take part in this year's concours d'elegance that is set for September 27th. Maina entered his 1954 Morris Minor for this year's event as he celebrates 8 years since his first entry in 2006. Backed up by a group of experienced mechanics, Maina is gradually preparing the Morris Minor, targeting a top finish this year.
We did have a few errors which we made last time. We have been able to correct most of them. We are thinking if and possibly we can manage to get everything right. We may be beaten as far as the bodywork is concerned, but I am also pleased to say they did not beat us on the engine, and I don't expect us to be beaten by them again this time on. To participate in the concours from the year 2007, I might have missed 2, but I think the last concours that have all been sponsored by CBA, mine has been there, and so I'm still looking forward to this one.
All the best to Maina Mudhuma. But moving on, Chile and Peru, two of South America's biggest rivals, square it out in the semi-finals of the Copa America. Chile's Copa America semi-final with Peru will be settled in Santiago tonight, but the two nations will continue to bicker long after the full-time whistle. And well, that's how we wrap up tonight's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Lynn Washira. Be sure to join me tomorrow for another comprehensive edition of KTN Sports. But for now, have a very good night. Linda Gut will be back to wrap up KTN Prime.
Should Waiguru be suspended over the NYS saga? Let's take a look at what some of you have to say about it. Javas Masharia says, yes, democracy is a charming form of government dispensing a sort of equality to equals and unequals alike. Cliff_Kip says, so ye who reports a crime to police is to be jailed. The money has been confirmed to be in the system. And finally, Anton Haukwa says, if you are accused, you give space for investigation, and if found not guilty, then you take back your job.
Matches our new attitude to make positive change to your lives with everything we do. Welcome to Fidelity Insurance. Insurance you can trust.
And that's where we leave it on KTN Prime. We thank you for watching. Sleep well. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm Linda. For good.